Hey Peter, it's Guys. You've probably heard that as a South African, you need to diversify your investment portfolio by investing your money offshore. But seeing that this adds an extra layer of complexity, you may not know exactly what this means and how you can actually do it in the right way. Well, you are in luck, as in today's video, I will explain exactly that. I will start by presenting the case for why you should consider investing offshore, followed by how much of your portfolio would be reasonable to put into the offshore markets. I will then give you the 3 best strategies and platforms that you can use to optimize your returns and compare each one with the other so that you can make an informed decision on which strategy will work best for you. Now, it is really important that you really understand all the principles around offshore investing that I will cover today. So I would encourage you to watch through this whole video. Trust me, your future self will thank you for it. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So first off, why should you invest your money offshore? Is it not enough to just buy the Satrix Top 40 ETF or invest in blue chip company shares like Naspers and be done with it? Well, no, definitely not. And here's why. First off, South Africa only contributes to around 0.41% of the total water economy, and although most of the large cap companies in South Africa earn most of their revenue overseas, I don't think that this will really bump that number up that much. So by only investing in the South African market, you are essentially limiting your portfolio's potential growth by not exposing it to more than 99% of the world's economy, thereby restricting the opportunities to invest in some of the biggest and most successful businesses and markets in the world. Secondly, the value of the South African rand is decaying at a rather concerning rate. What do I mean by this? If we look at the past 5 years, and yes, I actually went and did the calculation, you can thank me by smacking the like button. The inflation rate in South Africa averaged around 4.72%, where the inflation rate in the US averaged around 1.77%. This means that over the past 5 years, the rand weakened against the dollar at an average rate of 2.95% per year. Not a long enough time period for you? Okay, over the past 10 years, the average inflation rate in South Africa was 5.08% versus the US of 1.73% with a difference of 3.35%. And over the past 20 years, it was 5.19% in SA and 2.06% in the US with a difference of 3.13%. And just because Peter is a numbers nerd and I decided to look back all the way to the 1960s, the average inflation rate of South Africa over the past 60 years was 7.96% versus that of the US of only 3.74% with a difference of 4.22%. So what does this mean and why do I keep on hammering on these numbers? It means that if you compare someone investing only in the South African market to someone only investing in the US market over the past 60 years, then the South Africans' investments will need to outperform that of the Americans by at least 4.22% per year on average just to break even in terms of real returns because of the rand's rapid devaluation against the US dollar. So would this be possible, you ask? Well, let's see. If you compare the performance of the JSE All Share Index, which tracks all the companies in South Africa, with the Wool Share 5000 Index, which tracks all the companies in the US, we will see that over the past 5 years, the Wool Share Index achieved a growth of 105.78% or 21.16% annually, whereas the JSE Index only returned a mere total growth of 8.3% or 1.66% annually. Granted, I couldn't find the data of the performance going back all the way to the 1960s, but even if you compare this 5-year performance to the inflation rate over the past 5 years, where the rand weakened against the dollar at an average annual rate of 2.95%, I'm sure that you can see where I'm getting at. Not only did the US market completely eclipse the returns of the South African market by an average of 19.5% per year over the past 5 years, but the rand also weakened against the US dollar by an average of 2.95% per year, which essentially means that you would have been 22.45% better off investing your money offshore than what you would have been investing in the local market. Now, these numbers may not replicate themselves in the future again, but as you can see, this is already really alarming. As much as I love this country and want to stay optimistic about its future, the numbers don't lie, like my hips. And being aware of these two important points, I would be a complete fool not to diversify my investments into the offshore markets, as otherwise I would be missing out on a massive amount of growth, right? Okay, so how much of your investment portfolio should you then consider putting in the offshore markets? Now, I cannot give you a clear-cut answer here, as there are many things you need to take into account. From a pure number standpoint, it will be 99.59% due to the fact that South Africa only contributes 0.41% to the total world's economy, as mentioned earlier. But there's also the argument that if you stay in South Africa, you earn in rands, you spend in rands, and so you should invest in rands. But if you are planning to immigrate, or you know that you would like to maybe one day retire in another country, then it would make sense to allocate a higher percentage to your offshore investments. Now, if you research this question, you will get people who are on both extremes. And I really tried to find the best answer, but because I tend to fall into analysis paralysis, I personally settled for a 50-50 split between local and offshore investments. I am currently employed in South Africa, do not have any immediate plans to relocate overseas, and would also like to believe that the country will still be in a decent enough state for my children to one day get a proper education and career opportunities. But that's just me. You will need to decide for yourself what will work best for your own circumstances and beliefs. If you need some help deciding, then go check out this article from the Go Freedom blog. Okay, lekker. I hope by now that you are convinced to diversify into the offshore markets. So now let's explore all the different ways that you can do this as a South African. The first and easiest way to get offshore exposure is to invest in rand-denominated offshore ETFs on a platform like Easy Equities. These will be your core shares Total World, Satrix MSCI World, or Signia iTrex S&P 500 ETFs, for example. So how these work is you buy the ETF in rands, the fund manager of the ETF converts your rands to US dollars and then buys the underlying shares in the index that the ETF is tracking in US dollar. If you then decide to sell your holdings, then the fund manager will first need to sell your holdings in US dollar, convert the dollars back to rands, and then pay you back the rand amount. All this happens automatically, so all you will actually see on your end is the rand value of your investment. Okay, so because of this conversion, there are basically two important drivers of your investment performance. First is the growth of the companies within the index that ETF is tracking, which we are all familiar with. But then secondly, the price movement between the rand and the US dollar will also play a role. Let me explain this with an example. Say the current ZAR to USD conversion rate is 1 US dollar to 10 rand. I know, this is way too optimistic, but come on, it makes the calculations a lot easier. Now, if one share of an offshore ETF costs $10 and I invest 1,000 rand, then I will be able to buy 10 shares. Now, if the companies in the index does really well and the share price increases to $20 each, then my investments will be valued at $20 times 10, which equals $200, and at a rate of $1 to 10 rand, it will be 2,000 rand. Lekker, ne? But now let's look at another scenario. Say I buy the same amount of shares with the same rate, the company does not achieve any growth or loss, and the share price remains exactly at $10 a share, but now the rand weakens to 20 rand to $1. What happens now? Well, I still have my 10 shares valued at $10 each, which equals $100. But because the exchange rate is now $1 to 20 rand, this actually increases my investment value to 2,000 rand, even though the share price remained exactly the same. This is also true for the reverse, meaning that if the rand strengthens against the dollar, then my investment would effectively also be worth less in rand terms. I hope this all makes sense. If it doesn't, then also go check out this article, which explains it a bit more in detail. So I know what you are thinking. Peter, this sounds golden. Seeing that we know that the rand weakens against the dollar every single year, and that a weakening rand is great for rand denominated offshore ETFs, then why don't we just YOLO all our money into rand denominated ETFs? Well, although I do think that this is already a much better strategy than most people, there is risk with this. Yes, your investments will go up in value if the rand weakens, but this is only valuable if the rand still has any value. Huh? What I mean is, if for some unfortunate reason South Africa hits hyperinflation and go down the dark spiral like neighbor Zimbabwe, then this will render these investments completely useless. As what is the point of having 1 million rand if that 1 million rand can only buy you a loaf of bread? Will this happen? I don't know. And that is a discussion for another day. But it is a risk that we need to take into consideration, which is why we need to look at strategy number 2. For this strategy, we want to minimize the risk of the rand going completely bust, and the best way to hedge against a falling rand is to convert your rands to dollars and then use those dollars to invest directly into the offshore markets. The easiest way to do this is to make use of the Easy Equities US dollar account. Now, I have already made comprehensive tutorials on both how to use the Easy Equities platform as well as how to fund and buy shares using the Easy Equities US dollar account. So you can go check out them both after this video. I will leave the links in the info cards and down in the description. Now, this strategy will work for the majority of you guys, as it is really simple to do, and the Easy Equities US dollar account gives you access to over 628 individual US companies and 171 US based ETFs. Yes, I did go and count them. And seeing that the US makes up almost 60% of the total world's economy, this is already a massive upgrade than just investing in the JSE. Now, of course, there will be one problem with this strategy, as nothing in the investment world is ever simple. As a non-US citizen, you will need to pay the IRS estate duty or CITES tax of between 18 to 40% of all your US based investments valued above $60,000 when you die. This will be on all your investments whether shares are registered in the US, be it individual shares or ETFs. This is a massive chunk of your hard-earned money going to the government of a country that you may have never even been to. Of course, you won't be affected by this because, well, you'll be dead. But it does affect those you leave behind. And seeing that you now know this, you can actually now do something about it. Whether or not this is a concern to you will obviously be a personal choice. I, for one, do want to know that one day when I do enter God's kingdom, that I will be able to leave enough behind to sustain my family for quite a decent while. Some of you might feel a bit different and are not planning on leaving any inheritance nor to die rich. The truth is, we cannot predict these things, and I would rather want to be proactive and adjust my investment strategy in advance instead of being caught up by some sly rule that drains away almost half of the money that I slaved away in my entire lifetime to secure. What is your opinion about this? Let me know down in the comments. And this brings me to the third and final strategy. This one also involves converting your rands to dollars and then investing it directly offshore, but instead of buying shares in the US domiciled companies or ETFs, you will be buying Irish domiciled ETFs. Why the Irish? Because the Irish are lekker mense. Their government does not have this ridiculous estate duty tax rule that the US has, which means that they won't steal a single cent of your inheritance when invested in their stock exchanges, such as the London Stock Exchange, as long as you don't physically live in Ireland and you transfer your inheritance to a spouse who is also not physically living in Ireland. The problem here is you cannot buy these Irish domiciled ETFs on easy equities, as they only give you access to the US ones. So we need to go and find another broker that allows this, and lo and behold, not only is there one, but it is arguably the best broker in the world with which South Africans can actually register and trade with. It is called Interactive Brokers, and if you want to learn how to open and fund an Interactive Brokers account, then go check out my step-by-step tutorial. Now, because of all its fancy functions, the Interactive Brokers platform is a bit more difficult to learn and understand. I get that. If investing using easy equities is like driving a car, then investing using Interactive Brokers is like flying a plane. I was also very intimidated when I first started exploring this option, but if you speak to any well-informed South African that seems like he or she has their personal finances in order, I'm sure that the majority of them will agree that Interactive Brokers is the way to go. We are all beginners in the investment world at some stage of our lives, but that does not mean that we need to stand back and be afraid to learn. There are many great tutorials on how to use this platform that I will link to down in the description, and if you guys really want, then I can also make my own tutorial in the future. Just let me know down in the comments. Now, in terms of costs, buying a rand denominated ETF will cost you about 0.37% of the trade value using your Easy Equities ZAR or tax-free savings account. If you want to buy US shares using the Easy Equities US dollar account, your total cost will be around 3.21% of the trade value, which is made up from the spread that Easy Equities use on their currency conversion of 2%, the Easy FX transfer fee of 0.57%, and the Easy Equity US dollar account brokerage costs of 0.64%. The cost for the Interactive Brokers account is a bit more complicated to calculate, but in essence, if you used Shift to fund your account, you will need to pay the spread that Shift uses of 0.6% to convert your ZAR to US dollar, a flat rate of $14 to transfer your US dollars to Interactive Brokers, and then a brokerage fee of around a minimum of $1.91 when buying an Irish domiciled ETF, such as the VWRA or Vanguard FTSE or World ETF that I buy. So yes, this is much more expensive when trading small amounts, but does actually become cheaper than the Easy Equities US dollar account when trading more than around 10,000 Rand at a time. Now, I have links down in the description that you can use to sign up with either these accounts, and in doing so, you can get a 50 Rand free cash voucher with Easy Equities and a free stock with Interactive Brokers worth up to a whopping $1,000. So as you can see, these are the three main strategies that you can use to invest your money offshore as a South African. There's no one straight answer of which one to choose, as that will depend on your own specific scenario, values, and beliefs. What matters is that you are aware of each one's pros and cons, and that you can therefore make an informed decision and pass on your knowledge to the next person. That is the type of culture that I want to cultivate with this channel. These are much more advanced investment topics, and it really did take me quite a long time to really understand and get my head around. But now I am at a place where I can confidently share my knowledge with you guys in order to help improve the overall financial well-being of my fellow South Africans. So if you found any value in this video, then please klap die like knoppie so hard that it turns blue. That is all I ask. It really helps out my channel a lot, and it also motivates me to continue making these high quality, in-depth videos for you guys. So this concludes this 3-part video series on how to invest in the offshore markets as a South African. I would encourage you to go watch my first 2 videos as well, which I'll link to over here, so that you can get a full picture and be able to make your own informed decision. If you guys have any questions, then please feel free to gooi them in the comments. Lekker!